President Muhammadu Buhari is in New York to attend the 72nd United Nations General Assembly.
Federal government proposes 2 national sites between Nigeria and Cameroon to become biosphere reserves.
Senate Committee on Works charges contractors in Niger State to execute the project according to specifications.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we will look at the military operations in the southeast and how to manage industrial relations in Nigeria.
The general strike of 1945 marked a turning point in trade unionism in Nigeria. This emboldened workers in various trade industries to demand higher wages and also better working conditions. And the cause of many of the strikes was a failure of the government to implement wage improvements and also working conditions that had been pledged.
Now, to date, strikes have been a recurring decimal, as hardly any year passes without one union or more going on strike. And these bring constant disruptions in all spheres of our national life, from the educational sector to the oil industry, health sector, and of course the power sector of the economy.
Well, in recent times, strike actions by doctors to protest the non-implementation of the agreement with the government has prevented many Nigerians access to quality health services. Strikes by the academic staff union of university has also become a common thing, and many more unions are also threatening to down tools.
And as a blessing, many are actually, wondering why the instruments of resolving issues are not employed, but rather see the strikes as too many. They posit that if the procedures for dispute settlement are being followed, the strikes may have been prevented. Industrial actions is defined as encompassing, affecting the management of labor, including activities of government or its agents in manpower management. Well, these include not only labor management or relations, but all embracing approach to resolving and or reconciling conflicts, as well as improving the lot of workers in the relationship between employer and, of course, the employee.
You're quite right, Kirian. For many, they believe that strike should actually be the last resort when you look at the principles of industrial relations. But then, labor experts have also pointed out that the relevant agencies whose statutory role is to prefer solutions to industrial disputes are failed in their duty, as about 60% of all industrial disputes in Nigeria result in industrial actions, and which should not be so in the first instance.
And they say collective bargaining, the process of negotiation between an employer or group of employers on the one hand, and one or more trade unions on the other, designed to produce collective agreements geared towards the prevention of industrial conflicts and their resolution where they occur, and of course the promotion of industrial peace and harmony.
Well, some of this is not necessarily being looked into. Well, just to explore more that usually when you see people, okay, workers actually being locked out, or some other instances where we call for strike action people to stay back at home, most of the times you now get that, okay, proactive action is not being taken. And most of the time people now, okay, once they just go back, not in the same way they have called out the people to actually go on strike, they now decide, okay, somehow, somewhere, somebody has been cornered or compromised in action too.
Exactly.
How can exactly?
And oftentimes, it's always not the result of the strike action has never been positive. It's always been, it ends up in negotiation, and it then continues to recycle.
And of course, the effect, of course, is what we're seeing on the economy. Most of the time, people actually lose good, productive manpower and hours to actually look into. Well, how can we be proactive with ways of resolving these issues without actually resulting into strikes, as we are currently witnessing in the country? Well, that is our focus on today's edition of the program, the first one for the working week. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Blessing Abu. I believe you had a great weekend. And if so, let's start off on a very wonderful note.
All right, and I believe you do too. I am Kirian Umar. Good to have you join us on the program, coming to you live from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the largest television network in Africa. And also we shall be taking a look at the Operation Python Dance of the military in the southeast. The Director Defense Information will be joining us in the course of the program to give us an insight into what is happening there. In addition to that, we also have our usual companion segments, which will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. And we are kick-starting with the news of the morning. And Ademi Omojola Fatoba is our guide. Good morning, Ademi.
Good morning, Kirian. It's a new week. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in New York ahead of the opening of the second session of the United Nations General Assembly. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that it is the third outing of the Nigerian leader at the global annual event since coming to power. The federal government has proposed 2 national sites and 2 transboundary areas between Nigeria and Cameroon to become biosphere reserves. Minister of Environment Ibrahim Usman Jibril said this at the 5th session of the General Assembly of African Network of Man and Biosphere Reserves in Ibadan.
What we have must have to be managed sustainably, efficiently. We therefore owe it a duty to hand over a sustainable environment through sound and proper environmental management issues.
UNESCO, through the program and with the support of the governments and the committee, to sit around the table to discuss the issues, the different interests, and trying to find a solution so that the livelihoods are locally sustained.
The Senate Committee on Works has charged contractors handling federal government projects in Niger State to execute the projects according to specifications and meet up with the completion period. Chairman of the committee, Senator Kabir Ibrahim Gaya, gave the directive while on an oversight tour of ongoing federal government projects in the state.
What we want is for the job to be commissioned next year if possible. Because even if you are not given full mobilization, you are given a lot of money, over 2 billion naira.
The Nigerian Television Authority has received a pat on the back for the professional and patriotic way it covered the 2017 Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia. Chairman of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria, Abdullahi Mukhtar, at a parley with media practitioners in Makkah, said NTA has once again demonstrated our capability in television broadcasting.
Back home have gained tremendously from the feedback we have received. Many people become more aware and better informed about the sacredness of Hajj itself and the lessons in so many aspects of the Hajj.
The Southeast Governors Forum has reinforced their desires in the restructuring of Nigeria, where all the national issues will be discussed and settled amicably. Chairman of the Forum and Mboy State Governor, David Umahi, in a media briefing announced the proscription of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB.
You cannot be insulting Mr. President. You cannot be insulting other tribes. If we feel marginalized, let us focus on that. We've set up a very high-powered, committee to investigate all allegations and then make submissions to us so that we can take up the discussion.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says the activities of IPOB is a sponsored plot to discredit the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration and diverts the people's attention from the achievements of government. The minister stated this at a media briefing in Lagos.
That IPOB was not set up to fight for the right of anyone or group, but really as a tool to destabilize the nation, divert attention from the efforts of the Buhari administration, and obliterate the laudable achievements of the government.
And now to some health matters. Over 1,000 persons with different eye ailments in Kano have benefited from a free surgical service. The week-long exercise forms part of activities marking 10 years of Eye Care Women and Youth Initiative by the wife of the former Vice President, Amina Namadisambo.
Train the traditional birth attendants. We do carry out other health issues in terms of HIV/AIDS. We have given drugs to over 10,000 people. We have also carried out this operation that you are seeing here. Is not the first time IKEA is carrying it. We have done it in so many states in Nigeria, and we felt coming back home to give back to our people was going to be the best thing as we celebrate our 10-year anniversary.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Kyrian and Blessing after this break.
From 1967 to 1970, Nigeria went through a horrifying civil war. It didn't matter who was wrong or right. Everybody suffered. Those who fought that war say it should never happen again.
So a lot of people will say, but you were leading the first one. Yes, I led the first one. I don't think a second one is necessary. We should have learned from that first one. Otherwise, the dead would have been to no avail. It would all have been in vain.
The words of our elders are full of wisdom.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
This is the game I've been waiting for, and I get a headache. But I remembered Mom's advice.
Son, don't let anything stop you, okay?
When headache strikes, I always trust Sudrex. Because Sudrex acts fast to relieve headaches. Sudrex, win your day.
Calm down. The movie I'm downloading is on 95%.
It's still on.
Eh?
Introducing Airtel Unlimited Data Plans. Get Unlimited 10 for 10,000 Naira. Get Unlimited 15 for 15,000 Naira. And Unlimited 20 for 20,000 Naira. Unlimited data. Unlimited you.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Helen!
You do great value shopping.
Absolutely. I'm a champion at getting value.
Then you must have bought the Hapic 200 ml.
Why Hapic when I have this?
Even after applying them 10 times, they won't give a sparkling clean toilet.
Impossible.
Challenge. Detergent and bleach can't give a sparkling clean toilet even after 10 times. But Hapic 200 ml gives a sparkling clean toilet at one go.
Wow.
Hapic 200 ml. Real deal. Now only 200 Naira.
Straight A's mean better days. On those days I worry, my mind's so blurry. Studied every chapter, still can't find the answer. Always is the answer with its comfortable top layer and reliable protection with Super Gel. No stain, no chat. I know what gets straight A's. Straight A's mean better days. Our future starts today. Stay happy always.
Now for only 150 Naira, get the new Always Pocket Money Pack.
Every day, I see patients who come to me suffering from infectious diseases caused by germs, from typhoid to diarrhea, flu, cough. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily when we use the toilet, from our door handles, from other surfaces, we transfer to others without realizing. That is why we recommend Dettol Antiseptic Liquid. Protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure.
Hi guys, look how my baby Jamil has grown. And as they grow, there's a worry we all share, skin rash. Some use lotions or petroleum jelly, but I found what works for Jamil is Nigerian Pampers. It has built-in lotion to help protect his delicate skin and keep him dry. See you in the morning, Jam Jam. Good morning, happy Jam Jam. Dry and soft and no sign of a rash. Join many other moms and try Nigerian Pampers with lotion. Let's beat the rash.
Hey, great news! Oral-B has just been voted Kudo's #1 quality toothpaste of 2017 by you. So even though times are hard, as a mother, you know that Oral-B is good for your family's oral health because they deserve the best. It's great value because it protects you against tooth holes and gum problems that can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier and stronger teeth in 1 week.
If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria. Time now to take a look at the business report for the day. Cocoa production in Nigeria is expected to rebound in 2017-2018 planting season. Let's find out more details with Anuna Nojin.
Good morning, and it is a beautiful day to talk business. As the Monetary Policy Committee meeting NPC is set to commence, the Central Bank of Nigeria has assured Nigerians that the bank will continue to fine-tune the measures that will ensure that interest rates remain supportive of domestic production while working consistently for a stable exchange rate regime. To this end, the Apex Bank says with ongoing recovery in the economic performance, there is optimism that improved outcomes would be recorded soon as the bank continues to work towards taming inflation, bringing down interest rates and guaranteeing exchange rate stability. The Central Bank of Nigeria has continued to consistently devise approaches to solve peculiar challenges and would continue to learn from the experience of other countries, particularly developing nations. The Apex Bank, however, recognized the administrative measures to reduce imports may not be compatible with current trends in the economic management that lean towards free markets. Meanwhile, the Cocoa Association of Nigeria says the country should see a bumper cocoa harvest in the coming season as late rains have helped boost port production. The Cocoa Association of Nigeria expects output for the new season, which starts in October, to hit between 300,000 tons and 320,000 tons, up sharply from the season just ended, which was blighted by poor weather. The cocoa season in Nigeria, the world's fourth biggest producer, runs from October to September, with an October to February main crop and a smaller light or mid crop that begins in April or May and runs through September. World cocoa prices have declined by a third in the last year amid a global supply glut after record production from top growers Ivory Coast and Ghana. Closing figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange saw mixed sentiments the week ending 15 September 2017. The NSE OSHA index appreciated by 2.6% to close at 35,005.57 basis point, while market capitalization stood at 12,068 trillion naira. Next is a graphic summary of more details. That is business news for now on Good Morning Nigeria. The program continues shortly.
Thank you, Amina, for that business report. Now, newspaper review is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
Our newspaper reviewer by Atoebi is already seated. We'd like to welcome you to Monday's edition of the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Blessing. Good morning, Kylian. This is week 38 of the year.
Yeah, welcome by.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kieran, want to start?
Okay, go ahead.
For the Nigerian Tribune, just as well as some other papers, the stories about IPOB and the activities in the Southeast, what most of the papers are reporting. Treasury looters, disgruntled politicians sponsoring IPOB. This is coming from the federal government. 4 riders to that story. Turkey denies supporting IPOB. 59 arrested IPOB members to face murder and arson charges. Plateau relaxes the curfew, and Python dance now annual exercise. This is coming from the Army. For details, you'll find more reports on pages 4 and 9. But just above that, we have some other stories. 50 feared drowned. 50 feared drowned as boat capsizes in Niger. And you find more details on page 31. Ibadan family heads ask Olubadan to begin installation of new ballets and mortgages. There was details on page 31 as well. HID Awolowo's second memorial service holds tomorrow in Shagamu. Find more details on page 9. The photograph you have there is that of the president on Sunday leaving Abuja for New York, United States for the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly. And just beside that, you have Nigeria's Q2 growth, evidence of sustained exports promotion. More details on page 11. Police arrest 11 Lagos secondary school students for cultism. Southeast leaders plan grand rally on restructuring. More details you find on page 9. $21.8 billion on remitted funds. Nigeria lost the size of 2017 budget to NNPC. Well, the rider to that is the health implications. More details on page 10. Quickly now to the authority. Above the nameplate for the authority, you have the same story about the boat capsizing in Niger. 56 missing as boat capsizes in Niger, page 4. That's still on page 4. There's the story again. FATF warns on Nigeria's suspension from Egmont's group. And you have Saraki CSOs meet over controversial 3 billion naira per senator's pay. New Yam Festival is traditional version of Thanksgiving to God. Details on page 28. Now, the leading story for the authority is that of soldiers and IPOB face-off in the Southeast. Southeast Northern Governors dialogue on peace with 2 riders. Ohaneze renews opposition to military action, and Senate to meet with security chiefs. Nigerians are suffering, APC admits. More details on page 4. Kieran.
Yeah, well, let's get to bio now. Let's see how you can digest some of the...
Yes, first of all, our hearts must go to the people of Niger State, where a village in Kiri, 60 people boarded the boat, and the boat unfortunately capsized. Apparently, the boat had been overloaded. And you know, local boats, they don't have life jackets. So far, 50 bodies have been recovered. 4 persons were saved. We are still looking for the rest. And so our hearts must go out to them there. But meanwhile, the Minister of Information has alleged that separatist group IPOD is being manipulated politically by disgruntled politicians and treasury looters. The Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, said separatist group were in the service of the purpose to achieve what he described as inglorious aim of destabilizing the country. He has commended the Nigerian army for forcefully coming out and declaring them as a terrorist group. He has also appealed to the media to show restraint and not to sensationalize the issues. He has urged the international community to be aware of the criminal tendencies of the separatist group, particularly that they are now harvesting gory video movies and claiming that they have happened elsewhere in the territory. Punch also reports that a spokesman for the separatist group said that the proscribed group was self-funding and their aim was to challenge marginalization and seek restructuring. Meanwhile, the new commissioner of police for Abia, Antonio Ogbizi, says 1 person and the police officer were confirmed dead after the attack suspected to be by members of the separatist group IPOD. He says 59 suspects have so far been arrested. Among them, 30 were arrested at Isialangwa Junction and 29 others were arrested in Umuahia. They are to be charged to court immediately. Meanwhile, the Nigerian army has says that is operation that it described as Python Dance 2, otherwise known as Egwe K2, is a field training, and it is an annual exercise, and it will continue. They say that it was not intended to any group or persons. He says that this is the skill intended to train officers of the 82 Division, and it may be recalled that it was carried out last year, particularly during the Ember months, what is described annually as Ember months, and this helped in eliminating incidences of kidnapping, abduction, and armed robbery in the Southeast, and members of that nation enjoy a peaceful Christmas. The Army also said that it is not only the only operation going on. He said in the Northeast, there is Operation Gamma Ike, which is a joint multinational force also going on. Similarly, Northeast has what they call Harbin Kunama, which covers Zamfara, Kaduna, Kebbi, Katsina, and Kano, that is for Northwest. North Central has Operation Safe Haven, which is covering Benue, Kogi, Nasarawa, and Kwara State. The South-South have had operations Delta Safe by the Navy. Another operation was Pulo Shade by Navy, and there is also Crocodiles by the Army. The Southwest has Operation Awasi, which was intended to eliminate challenges of vandalization of pipelines in Lagos and Ogun State area. And therefore, it is a national assignment that is being carried out.
All right, but let's stop here and go to the other two national dailies we have here. I have a Daily Trust here, and below the nameplate you have EFCC traces Dubai properties to Desani. On page 3 has details of that story. And then Daily Trust Economies, how federal government can sustain economic growth, is also on page 3 of Daily Trust. And then the main headline is still on IPOB as a blessing ready in other national dailies. Northern governors meet Buhari over IPOB. Now below you have a photograph which also appeared in so many of the national dailies today. This the president leaving for US for the UN meeting. And now 56 fear dead, as Bayo has already told us, dead in Niger State boat disaster. Page 4 has details of that on Daily Trust. Then anxiety as federal government begins electricity tariff review on page 15. And then on the foot of the Daily Trust, Cancer Center pledges vanished after Yaradua's death, says Toure, of course the wife of the deceased former president of Nigeria. Page 6 has that story. And our court remands woman who wants to marry her son's friend. All right, that's on page 47 of Daily Trust. Then road projects. Federal government pays 62 contractors 47.169 billion naira on page 4. Now quickly let's look at Daily Independent. Well, above the nameplate we have the report on the boat mishap there. And below the nameplate, we have some economic, reports. MPC, FX stability sustenance may influence rates retention. It's on page 9. Well, IPOB set up to destabilize Buhari's government, says federal government. As Blessing also read in the Tribune, it has sponsored by disgruntled politicians, treasury looters, and what have you. Now, below the photograph on Daily Independent, we have some striking stories here. $1.6 billion fraud. Dizan is used to be joined in case against Omokare. And then on the right-hand side of the newspaper, we have ULC insists on strike today. Nigeria needs 3 trillion naira or dollars for infrastructure in 30 years, says African Finance Corporation. Bayo.
Yes, finally, I think the Senate President has lended a voice that all should remain calm and the Senate will find solution to the challenges going on in the Southeast. The President also is to address the General Assembly, United Nations General Assembly today, and it is an opportunity for bilateral talks with the Secretary General of the UN as well as the United States President.
All right, Bayo, that'll be all for now. Tomorrow, certainly we'll see you again.
Thank you for having me.
This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll kickstart the first part of our conversation, taking a look at the Southeast and the military action there, Operation Python Dance. In a moment.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
The Nigeria of our dreams is our collective responsibility.
Take advantage of the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VADES. Declare your full assets and income and regularize your tax status with VADES, which is on from July 1st, 2017 till March 31st, 2018. It attracts no interest, no penalty, no tax prosecution, and no tax audit. Declare early to avoid interest and penalties. Visit www.vase.gov.ng or the nearest tax office for more information. This message is brought to you by the Federal Government, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and States Boards of Internal Revenue. VADES, I declare, my duty, my nation.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs on your hands. Your hands collect germs that causes diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is wash, wash, wash your hands. Use Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights.
Come do it yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for with this. Oh. Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry. I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, I could carry this ladder and come over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA. Well, we all know now that the Nigerian military has commenced a military operation, tagged Operation Python in the southeast of Nigeria. And for that reason, we are being joined in the studio by Major General John Enenche, who is the Director of Defense Information, to tell us what the operation is all about. Thank you, General, for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Karian.
Blessing.
All right, General. Operation Python dance in the southeast. There's so many reports. What exactly took place in the southeast?
What took place was actually a prelude to the commencement of the operation, which is a normal thing. Like going around the general area to get acquainted. I want to use terminologies that the general public can understand. Initially, the people had show of force. Of course, if you are used to show of force, when we do show of force is to go around, show the fitness of the troops and the equipment that we have. It's a normal thing, even for normal route march operations that we used to do. That was what happened. I would say before the actual commencement of the operation on the 15th of September, it was just that normal show of presence that, look, the operation that we announced some couple of weeks ago, we are going to commence it. That was what really happened.
Okay, this operation, this military operation said from time to time, purpose, timing, and location, were they all intact?
Very, very intact. It is a routine, normal operation training exercise of the armed forces, I would say, broken down into the 3 services. It is not dictated by any condition whatsoever. First and foremost, at the beginning of the year, all the services will conduct their annual medical fitness tests to ensure that all the officers and men are fit for operations and for any call-up. After that, all the series of preparations will be outlined in series to culminate mostly at the end of the year following the Roman calendar, which is normally done. It's not as recent as last year or last 2 years, but could come in different names and different forms. As old as I joined the Nigerian Armed Forces over 34 years ago or thereabout and commenced active service 31 years ago, it has been like that. And in the nearest future, it will continue to remain because it is an instant and normal military exercise and expectation to ensure that your armed forces are fit for active service.
All right, sir. There are allegations of abuses, and many videos are now in circulation depicting some level of brutality on the part of your men. What do you have to say to that?
Yes, what I have to say is that we are aware of some of them, which we have been availed by our security agencies, and we are investigating them. Of course, you know that because of the technology of ICT, all manner of things are gone with photoshopping, or everything as much as that can be cloned and can even be forged. We are investigating them. We don't take them lightly. And that is the situation where we are now. I doubt that if they are true, but I doubt if they are true. But if they are true, be rest assured that the appropriate sanctions will be applied.
But what that means whereby the operations, which are supposed to be your own annual exercise, are to be done in civilian areas where some of the civilians were actually, and there was any kind of confrontation?
No, yes, the operation are actually supposed to be conducted in civil habitations. That is why you call them internal security operations. They are not external operations. So they are supposed to be conducted there to protect lives and properties. And of course, the 4th generation crisis that we have now, asymmetrical situations, all the criminalities and all that dovetail into that are carried out within civil populated areas, not in the bush as it were several years ago. In short, you can hardly find any operation or any state of insecurity in contemporary times that would take you to the days of Second and First World War.
Well, is there any plan to withdraw the military after a period of time, or are they going to stay there for a longer period?
No, the operation won't transform. They all transform from one type to the other. Now, the one you are seeing actively now, all the various ones like Sharon Daji, Operation Awase, the one we have now in the southeast, Egweke 2. Egweke 2 particularly and the likes are for just about 4 weeks. And after that, they will now revert to the normal Operation Mesa, which is, that one is almost semi-permanent, and all the other ones. So that is the way it is.
Well, General, without mentioning words, activities such as this operation that have been carried out actually brought some kind of altercation between the military, which brought about some of those videos that we're now trying to condemn, whether they are right or not. Were there any form of provocation on the part of the civilians on what the military were doing that actually brought about?
Yes, there were actually provocations on, I mean, about 3 times or more, even more than that. But the one that have been declassified, and I can tell you, like during the press release, for the press release whereby I had to state the 3 reasons, amongst several others, you know, that led to our bringing to the public awareness of what the IPOB group is doing. Some of those things, you know, you block the road and you say you will not pass. I mean, that is provocative, and that is totally out of place.
But
it is not
done. Be like a civil strife or civil disturbance that even the police could actually quell?
No, will police come in and now quell a disturbance? It was not really a disturbance, because what did we do? There was nothing done. The soldiers were passing on the tent. You blocked them, say you should not pass through the road, and started casting missiles at them, petrol bomb and all. They just quietly left. And then if there would have been anything, it would have been to defend themselves and then leave that scene. Secondly, again, somebody, the acclaimed leader, comes out and says, look, you will not pass, and all manner of things, all manner of threats, and then, you know, try to snatch their weapon. Yes, of course. Will the police have time to even come? It was something that happened, you know, within a couple of, you know, minutes or hours. Then again, you now block the road and say, look. So all those things were things that, of course, you will know that there was no even time for the police to even come in. And of course, the police, after that, they will continue with their normal duties.
There were no time for the police to come in?
How will the police, ask me, my dear, how will the police begin to come in when you see a military man? Everybody was put on the notice that there's going to be an exercise, they are patrolling. And then you now say police should come and, you know, there was no real trouble per se, and that was why we pointed it out clearly that these are the actions of these people. They have become militant.
All right.
There was no confrontation, I mean, in the real sense of it.
Thank you for making some of these issues so clear, you know, to Nigerians. Now, the 5 southeastern governors, you know, met and jointly prescribed IPOB as a group in that part of the country. Now, how does the military react to this?
Well, the prescription for us is an effort enhancer, you know, in ensuring that there is security, particularly for the indigenes in that area. In short, the concern is mostly about the southeasterners. Some of the undeclassified information that is yet to come to the public is that the people are even more terrorized, they're even more afraid than even people outside. So we see it as a welcome development that, yes, it will also help in de-escalating the fear amongst the indigenes in that area. You won't believe it if I tell you some, maybe without permission, that maybe under, well, we have a law, we have a regulation, I can say that now, that even people as close as to Kanu's homes are frightened, and we get that information. They get across to us that, look, we are afraid. Of who? They say of these people. What are they doing? They are threatening us. That if we say this, we say that, you will go. So
all right.
It got to that level. So it's a welcome development.
So the people asking for withdrawal of the military from those areas of your operations now?
No, they didn't ask us. Okay, you are saying generally?
Yes.
In the public domain. Okay, exactly. Okay.
Now they're asking, what is the Army's reaction to that?
Army will not withdraw itself from an operation that has been programmed, that is routine, that is regular. Security is uppermost. You know, it's like a child. A child is going to touch fire, and you say, leave that fire, and the child will not understand why. That is our own stand. We are appealing to them to be patient. We have been conducting training exercises. I was a commanding officer in Nigeria 12 years ago. We have been doing all those exercises, and it has been continuing. And then I see no reason why that you should come in now. So we are appealing to them that they should come now, that 15th of October is just around the corner, and the operation, that particular operation will be over, and we'll revert back to Operation Mesa and the normal, routine exercises of route march and all the other ones that we'll continue doing.
Now, where you are located at the moment in the southeast, you know, is quite probing. May we just know whether the operation will cover the entire southeast, or are there selected states where you think there are more security issues to concentrate? Are you going to,
it's covering the entire southeast, southeast. It's covering the entire states there.
All right, sir.
General,
let me drop this before you come on. Sorry. The country has, if the country has to resort to military operations, to show power, is it not indicative of the fact that there is incapacity in intelligence gathering, for instance?
Or there is war?
No, not at all. It's a normal thing. Show of force is a normal procedure to give confidence to the public on the strength of your military. Even without this situation, it used to be done. For instance, as it were in those days, during independence parades, you will see that we will do the normal drill, and then we now do the drill of equipment. So it is not any indication in the real sense of it that there is a serious security challenge.
All right, General. Yeah. Are we getting the assurance that the military will be looking into to investigate any form of abuses, intimidation, and received so far?
As usual, it will be done. Be rest assured that the army, the armed forces in general, is always on top of it, and it will always be done. You have that assurance from the office.
Thank you very much, Major General John Enenja, Director of Defense Information. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning to clear the air.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. When we return from this break, it will be time to take a look at the second discussion this morning, taking a look at managing industrial relations in Nigeria.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another.
What keeps you so cool, man?
Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Another edition of TV Guide magazine is out with revealing accounts of trending stories. With the dwindling oil revenue, he says there is no reason to worry.
We strongly believe that culture is Nigerians' new oil. And we're going to show that by creating wealth, our art and culture will be a statement for all of us.
Our cover story is on Otumba Olusegun Runchewe, Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture. For upcoming TV presenters, Elegant Elizabeth Banu tells you what it takes. A peep into the activities of the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, a mandate being fulfilled. A trip to the Yankari Games Reserve and Safari in Bauchi State brings you closer to nature. And the Oshun Oshogo Festival, our culture, our pride. Professor Adiku, the Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, tells us what it means to manage a university, plus our regular features, star profile, media issues, relationships, young minds, entertainment, sports, and lots more. Pick your copy now at the vendors or at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
Managing relations between the workforce and government has always been a daunting task. In this background report, Leah Kaltung Babatunde looks at this relationship and how it has fared in the nation's development.
The cause of industrial crisis in the Nigerian workplace, some experts attribute to policy inconsistencies and wrong placement in organizational priorities on the part of the management. When employers place higher premium on capital input far above the workers without appreciating that the latter makes the former productive, would brood industrial rancor. This connotes that poor remuneration and low level of workers' motivation have been a bone of contention between the workers and employers. However, in the case of Nigeria, the peculiarity is that government is the highest employer of labor, so when disputes arise, government is faced with a whole lot of gamut affiliated to the labor movement. Despite an expanding private sector, the state continues to be the largest employer of labor, and data reveal that in 2004, labor force in Nigeria totaled 46.7 million. Nigeria today is a country undergoing fundamental political, economic and social change, especially with too many sectors yearning for scarce resources. The government at the receiving end of all agitations is now faced with the challenging task of finding long-term solutions not only to the question of her role but also to creating an appropriate system of healthy industrial relations. Among the most active unions are those representing petroleum workers and the university teachers, which have challenged the government not just on salary and economic issues but also on others they term as detrimental to their well-being and the work environment. Strikes called for by the labor movement have periodically disrupted the Nigerian economy with devastating cost implications. Today, a number of unions from health to the academia and other sectors are either on strike action or have put forward notices in that regard. On the issues of exercising workers' rights through collective bargaining as stipulated in ILO Conventions 98, Nigeria was among the countries that ratified the convention and allowed its workforce to engage in dialogue on the issue that affects labor and management relations. On Good Morning Nigeria today, our team of experts would, among other things, look at the reasons for the frequent strikes by workers and see why the provisions of collective bargaining and dispute resolutions are not being fully exploited for greater productivity and a more beneficial relationship.
Well, that's the focus this morning. Joining us to discuss our topic on how to manage industrial relations, we have in a studio here in Abuja, Dennis Zulu is a country representative of International Labour Organization Office covering Nigeria, Ghana and Sierra Leone. Mr. Zulu, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good to be here this morning.
Good to have you. And join us, but this time around from our Kaduna Center, we would like to welcome a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. Issa Remo is a NEC member of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and also Secretary General, Textile Workers Union. Issa Remo, thank you for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning, blessing.
And also from our Lagos studio is Comrade Peter Esele, former president of Trade Union Congress, TUC. Comrade, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Okaka, the principal consultant, Leadership Institute, an industrial relation and human capital development firm in Benin. He is joining us from our Benin studio. We are glad to have you join us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
All right, back to the studio here. Gentlemen, we have a very important issue on our desk this morning, and we would like to begin by asking our guests to actually look at why the incessant strike action in Nigeria for over 3 or 4 decades. This has been recurring, and of course it also happens in all departments of our life with respect to education, health service, and what have you. Let's begin with our friend from Dennis Zulu, who is here with us. Let's begin with you.
Well, I mean, in the case of Nigeria, there could be several reasons why this has been happening. I think industrial disputes arise as a result of a number of issues. One of the main issues that lead to industrial dispute is basically wage discussions. And as you know, wages are very important for workers because in return for their contribution to the organization, they expect a return in terms of wages. Now, the problem arises in determining what actually is the ideal wage, and this is where the discussion is. And of course, as I said, if there's no agreement as to what the worker believes is a commensurate wage for the services provided, that basically brings the whole discussion around this collective bargaining to a halt. And if there's no other way, then ultimately it's industrial unrest. So wage discussions is one of the many reasons why there's an increase in industrial unrest in the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Zulu. We'll come back to take a look at what ILO is trying to do alongside member countries. Okay, Kieran already reintroduced Dr. Emmanuel Kaka, Principal Consultant Leadership Institute. That's an industrial relation and human capital development firm in Benin. Now, Dr. Kaka, now, looking at around industrial relations in Nigeria, how would you describe the state of industrial relations generally in Nigeria today as compared to pre-independence period? Is it better today?
Very much. The issue of industrial relation in Nigeria is one that no one wants to envy. Why? Because of the incessant industrial actions that we have, incessant strikes that have been coming. It is not better today. In fact, things are going worse. It is going downhill. If you take statistics, you find out that on average, the number of strikes increases the year by year. And what is the reason behind it? We will come to look at why people are going on strike. It could be possibly that they do not have confidence in the system. The system that is set up to resolve industrial action, that is one major reason why people do not submit themselves to this system. And some have also looked at it, that the only language, like we have said, government is the highest employer of labor. The only language government and employers understand is strike. And that is why workers often go on strike. And when they do, what happens? The government and the employers listen to them. So if you are doing something and it seems it's paying off for you, you keep on doing it. But there is need to review the system and find out what can be done to avoid the situation of incessant strike actions. We'll go more and we'll look at what can do as a body, what the unions can do, what the industrial relations system itself, we're talking about the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment can do, so that they can help this situation to fall down, because it's actually alarming and it's not something that one should be happy about.
All right, let's go to Comrade Sela. Comrade Sela, you have been at the center of some previous strike actions in this country. You have worked with so many, comrades in this country, based on your former position, right, as a labor leader. Now, tell us, where is this problem coming from? Why the persistence? Why should it continue, unabated over the years? You have this experience, and we'd like to share that with you this morning.
I think one of the biggest problems also has to do with the ILO guy has spoken about communication. The leadership guy in Benin is talking about the only way you can get result is use of force. And the other aspect that I would also like to add is communication breakdown. There is no effective communication. You imagine you issued a notice of strike for 2 weeks and nobody talks to you until when it is 24 hours to the commencement of the strike. And at that particular time, the various organs of Congress have already taken a position which makes it difficult for the president to go back or not. Another aspect is that as industrial relations continue to evolve, you find out that even the Ministry of Labor, the Federal Ministry of Labor, is not involving. There was a time we had this mission would be treat others as you would like to be treated. Later it involved to treat others as they would need to be treated. And the current industrial way of negotiation now is mutual interest. So when the government or the employer are not looking at things from that perspective, you find out that you always have problems that we have now, and you're going to have recurring strike actions. And there's absolutely no trust in the system anymore. There used to be a time when the Ministry of Labor, you are holding a National Executive Council meeting, the Ministry of Labor is already knowing you are holding that meeting. The Ministry of Labor will be proactive enough to get the communique of that meeting. And if there are areas they need to address, they address it immediately. But what you have is nothing like that comes up anymore. And what you have now is everybody just feel the only way that government, my employer or my employees will listen, my employer will listen to me is for me to go on strike. Okay, now let's take, for example, ASU. Let me just give you a case study of ASU, and then we also look at the medical head. When I talk about negotiating based on mutual interest, what is the interest of ASU here now? Is that we want the educational system to be up to speed. And then what is the interest of government? Government wants to ensure that the backbone of any society is to make sure education it's functional. And then it's also qualitative. Why do you have to look at the mutual interest? Government is on this side, ASU is on this side. So how do we now negotiate or navigate these two? If government comes up and says, ASU, we can't give you 200 billion, for example. Now let us spread this 200 billion over 4 years. Every year we'll give you 50 billion. And in the next 4 years, actually that will be achieved. But government won't do that. What government will expect is you want ASU to go back to work, and then you have not done anything. So at the end of the day, ASU feel this government is not serious. Not just this government, previous government, they are not serious. So no matter what government comes up with, ASU is not going to listen. So these are all instances where you have breakdown of communication, lack of trust in the system, and you can't stand on any document that is signed between you and government.
Very much, Comrade Peter Selen. Let's go over now to Kaduna Center where Mr. Isaremo is seated. Now, for some of the actions that have been taken by the different sectors of late, it's been said that most of them could actually have been prevented if there were actual proper negotiation and that aspect of collective bargaining being put in place. Where have we had this dissonance of not actually meeting up to what the workers actually need and what the employers actually gain?
Well, thank you very much, Blessing. Let me once again say good morning to your colleague, Kiran, who have been keeping faith, and you have never been on strike. We commend you for that. But let me, intervene to do a follow-up based on what the ILO director have said, Dennis Zulu, and I hope we listen very well, that what we have at hand is crisis of compensation. What I mean by crisis of compensation is that working men and women, they live on their salaries, they live on their pay, and at the core of industrial relation is that you must pay every working man and woman as and when due and on time too. Now, it's easier for us to decry, strikes, industrial actions, and I listen to Okaka very well from Benin Center, but strikes and industrial actions are reactions to certain systemic violations of basic rules of engagement in the world of work. We talk of frequent strikes, but we've forgotten frequent, violations of collective agreements on the part of public sector employers. And for me, what we have seen here is a reaction to the systematic maltreatment of the workforce. If you check the 1999 Constitution very well, and I hope all our elected and appointed officials read the Constitution under which they take the oath, it emphasizes dignity of labor. In fact, labor is so critical as a factor of production in Nigeria, such that our Constitution puts it on the exclusive list. It talks of the primary purpose of governance is physical security and welfare of the citizens. The welfare components include living wage, pensions, health and safety, minimum standard for the working people. I don't think the drafter of our Constitution ever emphasized that we are going to have a Nigeria in which you hold salaries 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, some 11 months. You sign an agreement. In the case of ASU, I mean, just like what Comrade Peter Ezele was talking about, you had an agreement signed as far back as 2009, almost over a decade after. you refuse to implement the agreements. I'm from private sector, and I'm very sure Peter knows very well that in the private sector, when you sign an agreement, you are supposed to enforce the agreement. So I think maybe we should change the narrative, from, decrying the consequences of misgovernance, consequences of, lack of respect for simple rule of law and respect for collective agreement in public sector. So what I'm saying is that as we decry, agonize over industrial actions, I think we should also agonize over, complete systemic violation of collective agreement taking place in public sector. And I'm a bit more worried for the public sector because government wears two caps. First, the cap of employer, and secondly, the cap of enforcers of the law. Now, if the government doesn't respect agreement, what will be the moral authority of the same government to compel private sector employers, Chinese, Indian employers, who enter agreement to private sector workers not to respect it? So what I'm saying here is that I think we need a balance. I listened to you very well at the background story, that it wasn't like this in the 70s, in the 80s. In Nigeria in the 60s, we had some turbulence of some ruptures in industrial labor, but not in this form. Because in those days, collective agreement were being respected by public sector employers. Nobody ever, President Buhari said so. The other day, he had to even appeal to the governors to say, we pay you bailout, one, second one, Paris Club, you must pay. There's no excuse to pay your workers. That's the president himself agonizing. He said he couldn't believe how Nigeria will arrive at this, so you don't pay workers. And let me end up on this note. What is at hand here is that if you maltreat your workers the way we are doing so, it's difficult for us to get out of recovery. The greatest factor of production, known worldwide, is human resource. You need to motivate them, you need to pay them as I went, you need to dignify them, and our constitution is clear on that. In fact, I want to say that any employer, whether public, private sector, that violates collective agreements, also violates the spirit of the Constitution, which talks of dignity of labor. Section 23 is very clear. One of the key ethics, this 1997 Constitution is discipline, dignity of labor, patriotism, and labor is central, to our national development. So I think maybe what we need to do is that we decry or we agonize over strikes. We should rather look at causes of the strikes. And I think we should decry more the violations of basic rules of engagement as contained in our laws, labor laws, and as well articulated by the ILO director.
All right, former Deputy National President of Nigerian Labour Congress, you actually have acquired experience over the years as a Labour leader, just as Peter Esele. My next question will actually be going to Dr. Emmanuel Okaka, who is a consultant on industrial relations. Now, there are laid down procedures and process of negotiation. We've all talked about agreements not adhered to on the part of government. Now, would we say that all avenues have been explored? You're looking at all the strike actions we've had in history, and especially even the recent one now by ASU. Is there any conclusion that all avenues have been, explored before taking to strike, which was usually the last option? I'd like Dr. Okaka to come in here.
Very much. What we are saying here is, like Esele mentioned, we have a problem with the system itself. Now, when the system is not functioning the way it's supposed to function, then what happens? Workers at times have no option than to go on strike. Now, I agree that some options are followed. Some of the options are followed up to a certain stage. And when it seems there's no headway, what do? Most times, the workers have no other option than to go on strike. Look at the issue of ASU strike as a typical example. Agreements were reached in 2009. What is the Ministry of Labour? What is the Ministry of Labour doing about that issue? Now, the present negotiations they are having now over ending the strike is being headed by Chris Ngige and the Minister of Education. Are these experts in industrial relations? So these are questions that we are asking. So we know that often when strike comes in, the Nigerian worker has come of age to see that, well, no matter whatever you do, nobody listens. Esele mentioned something which I was very happy about. You give out a notice of strike. For 2 weeks, nobody answers you. A day to when you're about going on strike, you see government start calling, please appeal to them, appeal to their leaders, for the sake of the nation, for the sake of our children. what happens? At the end of the day, people start branding those individuals who have gone on strike to be bad. So the problem we have is that, one, the individuals are not confident in the system because the system itself does not work the way it should work. I was in the Federal Ministry of Labor not too long ago to request for statistics of strike. The office in Benin could not give me statistics of strikes for 2013 at 2017. So what are they doing? So these are issues were mentioned. So like the Nigerian Ministry of Labor has to do its duties, its responsibilities. We have a lot of legislations in this country that can actually address issues of strike. But the issue has to do with the system. The individuals who are saddled with the various responsibilities within the system must learn to do their work. And when they learn to do their work and do it right, and when it should be done, then things will move further. So what I see here is that, yes, agreed that at times the system is not the procedure, the grievance procedure is not followed until later. But the basic thing is that people are discouraged to follow the grievance procedure because at the end of the day, before you know it, the employer, take the federal government for example, jumps to the court, gets a court order from the industrial court by saying, don't go on strike. When the fundamental issues have not been handled. So all of this shows that, like, the entire system needs to be overhauled. Starting from the Federal Ministry of Labor, then even the unions themselves also need to do some overhauling themselves. ASU had an agreement with federal government. Nothing is coming out from the agreement. What did they do? We agreed that they've been sending messages, they've been writing up, they've been complaining, but there should be other efforts. When you keep on doing the same thing the same way, you get the same results. If agreements are reached, you wait for government to implement, government does not implement, what do? Do we have to continue this same process of we have waited? In 2016, a strike was embarked by ASU to look into these issues. So if you complain nothing has been done, what did you do? So even the labor unions themselves have to look for alternative ways of making sure that, yes, their own grievances, their own agitations, their demands are looked into. So it is very important we do that.
Still with you, Dr. Okaka. Well, you talked about the issue of experts being called, as in labor relations experts being called in when such industrial disputes do come in. Now, looking at the scope, or let's assess the scope of industrial relations since the democratic process, especially some agreement, like you mentioned the case of ASU, since 2009. Would you say this experience is making workers' right to be online in Nigeria? Workers' rights, is it online in Nigeria? Looking at, let's assess the democratic experience since 2009. You cited the case of ASU's presentation since 2009 itself.
Workers' rights are online here. You see, Aremu mentioned something which I was very happy about, that there has been consistent infringement on the rights of workers over the years, and it has continued. It has to do with the system. I still refer back to the system. There are agencies saddled with these responsibilities. When agreements are reached, like Esele was talking about, that those days you have members of the Federal Ministry of Labor being present when they're holding meetings. Go to the Federal Ministry of Labor as I'm talking to you and ask them if they have a copy of the agreement being reached between ASU and the federal government. They may not have it. So what are we saying here is that workers' rights are online. That is true, is online. And if care is not taken, it's not only going to just affect the workers adversely. And like Arami mentioned, it will also affect the economy. What are we saying today? Workers are no longer interested. The issue is, let's go on strike, let's go on strike. Those days, people think of to go to work because they know they have to produce. But now you look at it, whatever you are doing is not making sense. Those who are supposed to look at what we are doing, they are not making sense to it. So what do? The essence is, let's go home and rest. Like some will even say the pay is not even enough for us, so let us go home and rest and take some days out of it. So the workers' right is actually in line in this issue we're looking at, and is in line in Nigeria, and care must be taken. If not, it will deteriorate more than this.
Right, let's return to Abuja here and talk to Dennis Zulu of International Labour Organization for Nigeria. What is your assessment of all of this? You have listened to our conversation with other guests of this program who are labour leaders, for instance, and of course a consultant, industrial consultant. What's your assessment of all of this? And from the International Labour Organization point of view, right, what do you think is the problem?
Okay, but maybe let me first of all say that Nigeria is a signatory to a number of ILO conventions, and as you know, the ILO prescribes the minimum international labor standards globally, and Nigeria is a very important member of the ILO. And therefore, I think what we need to do is to ensure, like has been discussed by the other colleagues here, that we abide by what has been prescribed. I think one way of doing this is also to look at the existing labor laws. As you know, the existing labor laws have not been looked at since 2004. I'm glad to mention here that I note that government has taken a step now to have a look at them and bring them into conformity with what prevails globally at the moment. Because if you have a weak legislation which does not reflect current trends, and a lot of things have changed in industrial relations for the last 10, 15 years, and therefore it's important that the government takes the step, an active step with the tripartite partners in Nigeria. This is labor, organized the private sector, and government itself to ensure that legislation is brought to speed. But I think listening to my comrades here, one thing that is heartening is to note that I think we know what the problems are. The challenges find the solution. And the solution is ensuring that each one of us take responsibility for the issues that have brought about to the state of affairs in Nigeria at the moment. There's need for us to be conversant with the processes like someone outlined in terms of negotiation and collective bargaining. There's need for us to be well aware of the dispute resolution mechanisms. In our view as the ILO, lockout or strike really should be the last resort, because I think if you go into discussions and with an open mind and not with fixed positions, then you might make a bit of progress there. So the problem could be that either parties have fixed positions, and therefore it's very difficult to move from your fixed positions. So there must be, like one of the comrades said, mutual benefit, and therefore that you should end up with a win-to-win situation. Now, of course, our labor unions, our labor leaders are under extreme pressures for the workers out there to get the best for them in terms of remuneration for the production that they're involved in. So it's important, therefore, that we know what the situation is, because sometimes, in the case of the private sector as well, and moving away from government as an employer, government as a discussant, to a situation where you have a private sector employer and a trade union, it's important that either side is well equipped to be able to undertake in these negotiations, and information is accurately available. Because if, for instance, the employer does not have sufficient funds, he can't pay. And the other way, if the worker does not have knowledge to the fact that the employer does not have sufficient resources, they'll basically be arguing for money or asking for money, which normally the employer may not have. So it's important that there's this mutual trust between the employer and the employee in this regard, because ultimately what you want is a profitable company, you want a productive company, and a company that both the employer and the worker will be happy to work with. Now, in as far as Nigeria is concerned, going back to the government a discussion, or the current going discussions, government's role in let's say arbitration in one hand, but as well as government as an interested party, as an employer. Nigeria has within its industrial relations mechanism what is called the Tripartite Labour Consultative Council. And I believe as the ILO, we think this is a very important mechanism or institution that the organized labor and the private sector as well as government can use to...
How effective has this been in all of the arrangements?
Well, of course, this is one of the challenges we have, because I think there should be more emphasis and greater commitment to having more of these meetings, because then in the Tripartite Labour Council, each one of the three parties is basically is an equal partner. Because once you have a situation where one of the partners gains or is sometimes assumed to be slightly superior, then you have a problem. Then the faith that the other partners have in the process is lost. So really, we know what the problems are. Obviously, the Ministry of Labour, like many other ministries in Africa, Ministry of Labour need support, they need funding, they need human resources, because the work is huge. And we are working with the government and the Federal Ministry of Labour to see how we can support them, especially in issues where we need to look at how we can have effective dialogue between employers and employees to ensure that we do not, or we move away from a situation where industrial unrest or strikes or lockout become the norm of the day.
So have you fed in this intervention that ILO that is trying to push into it?
Well, I mean, it's a process, you know. It takes a bit of time before you get results into it, because there are many other external factors that do not actually facilitate this. For instance, if it's wage discussions, obviously the economy has a role to play in this. If the economy is not faring well, As you know, in the last 1 or 2 years, Nigeria was in recession, which has now come out of recession. So obviously that's a good thing. But of course, if the economy is in recession, then the playground becomes a bit narrowed. So these external factors have a role to play in it. But as long as there's commitment and faith by the major players, the employers and the workers in this case, we'll see, I think there's hope that we'll see a better Nigeria in terms of industrial relations.
Oh, okay, Mr. Zulu, and other gentlemen in Benin, Lagos, as well as Kaduna. We'll go on this break to bring some messages. When we return, we'll look at how much other negotiation will be in place to actually have that harmony to industrial relations in Nigeria.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Together, no matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together. Let's stop fighting each other. Let us live as one. It doesn't matter where you come from, your tribe or religion, man, woman or child. It doesn't matter who you are. Put Nigeria first. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
How can we develop when we're always in crisis? Families have become refugees in their country. No matter our differences, show some understanding.
No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And of course, we are looking at labor-related matters in Nigeria. We're having experienced industrial disputes over the years that often resort to strike actions, and sometimes at the end of the day, nothing good comes out of it. And today, we have gentlemen who have gathered experience over the years in labor-related matters. Now, let me come to you again, Peter Esele. You've listened to Dr. Zulu here of the ILO, made some suggestions. Of course, Dr. Kaka also talked about the system change along the line when he was making his own submissions. I would like you to react to Dr. Zulu's suggestion as to how we can move forward in labor relations with, of course, the employees.
One of the ways I know that we can move forward is that the consultative forum, the tripartite consultative forum, must have a monthly meeting. You don't have to wait until when you have a crisis before you now start calling for this meeting. Secondly, you just have to respect your collective bargaining agreement. I'll give you an example. And then thirdly, you just have to be transparent. You need to be open. I will share my own personal experience. I once worked for an oil company in Pengaston, for example. And then this company, we know what we expect to make in a year. We know what goes into research and development. We know what will go for profit. We know the percentage that will be used to pay compensation to the workers. And suddenly we had looked at the projection for the year, and we found out that we are not going to make enough money. But the collective bargaining agreement says that every June, there is a certain amount of money that must be paid. And the company came up and said, okay, fine, we will pay this amount of money. But again, down the road, because we have looked at the company's pulse, we are going to lose our members. Workers are going to lose their job. And then we came up and said, give us a wage freeze. We don't want any of this money to come in now. And let's see how the projection for the next year and 2 years' time was also very good. And we decided to take it. But why did we do that? We did that because there was issue of trust. We did that because we found out that the management respects whatever agreement that we have reached. And we also now know that we also have mutual benefit for the growth of the company. I was trained, the way I was trained was that in each of those trainings that I will sent by Pengaston, is that Pengaston made us to understand that the first thing is that the employer and the employee, our relationship is symbiotic, which means the employer also needs to survive, because if you don't have a job, you will not belong to the union. And if you are not a worker, the employer too can also not be productive. So now we need to find that balance. And most times people always lay emphasis on all of the unions in Nigeria are cantankerous. That's why I'm sharing my own personal experience. The unions in Nigeria makes a lot of sacrifices, especially at the president, the general secretary's level. If Issa Aremu has to share his experience, you will be amazed. Every day you have reports from across the country of people not being paid their salaries. So if we now need to do that, we need to look at how do you explain. When I was Pengassim president, agreements in the private sector, it's respected. It was not until when I became TUC president that I now found out that it is the government that is the biggest problem. The government don't have respect for any agreement that is reached. So how do you now talk to the government to say, government, you need to respect your agreement? Another aspect of it is that when government is going for negotiation, I'll tell you categorically, government ends up sending their third 11. While when the workers are coming for negotiation, they send their very best, and their best are trained. I've had a couple of instances, I leave a negotiation table, and I'm laughing to my hotel. Because those that are there, I'll give an example of whereby we've reached an agreement, and suddenly when we now give a notice that this agreement was not being implemented, the then secretary to the government of the federation, Pius, called me and said, how did we sign this agreement? I said, you sent your guys to this meeting. So they negotiated, and that is what has been signed. The same thing they also complained about the ASU agreement. Where were they when this was being negotiated? Capacity building is also another aspect which the Federal Ministry of Labour is lacking. When you have people who are not trained, who don't know the current or modern trend, who are not following the evolution of even the trade unions. There used to be a time when people think that, oh, trade union leaders are roughnecks, they are not people that should be respected. Issa Aremu went to some of the best schools in the country. Pengassim himself trained me at Wharton, Oxford, and they trained me around the world. And even in the private sector, the management in the private sector also trained their union leaders. And then you also have occasional year-end gathering where everybody comes together, and then the management understands what we are going through, and we also understand what the management is going through. So if you are able to build all of this relationship, which I've enumerated in a lot of my stories, which is one, respect your agreement, be transparent, be open, and then also have that interaction. In the government, have a monthly interaction. In the Federal Ministry of Labour, you also expect that those who are in charge of industrial relations must know the timelines of all these meetings. If unions are calling for emergency meeting means trouble is brewing. Somebody needs to be there for that emergency meeting to know what is emergency about that meeting. And if government need to react, government need to react. And if they are giving you 14 days notice, I don't support any union that will go on strike without giving notices. No, I don't support that. If you are going on strike, you have to give a notice, because the reason why you are giving a notice is that we all need to sit down and discuss. Even if you go on strike, we are still going to come back to the table to resolve these issues. It's only when you go on strike, you give notice and nobody listens to you, then you can go on strike. I consider strike as a nuclear option.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. We will return to you before we round off this edition of the program. And now to Issa Aremu, a man with experience too. Now, talking about government, not honoring agreements reached between it and labor. This has happened over the years. And again, there is another side of the story, that some labor leaders compromise their positions for some form of bribe. And after that, they call off the strike, only to return to strike again after a period of time. Couldn't that be the reason why government has not taken labor leaders seriously in this country? What's your take on that?
Well, thank you so much, Kira. I think from what everybody has spoken about, especially the last speaker, my very good brother, Peter Ezele, I think it is clear that even now that we're having our frustrations, about the general, seemingly, unsettled industrial relations situation, I think we should also look at where we have some best practices. And it's self-evident from what Peter has said and what I've said before, that in the private sector, where we have proper, vibrant, collective bargaining structures, there are crises, but they are better managed. I'm from textile sector, which you know faces a lot of challenges. But I want to tell you that this year alone, we signed the 46th national agreement, you know, covering wide range of issues, wages, benefits, allowances for our members. And you can see us dramatizing strikes based on that, because all the parties agree through our negotiating council, you know, that we all have stake within the industry. We must make the industry to survive. In fact, in the case of our industry, we are trying to revive the industry. In fact, there are two categories of disputes. You have disputes of rights, things that deal with wages, all of us are settled over. You know, we have bargaining structures. You know, if there are problems, we can resolve them. Then you also have disputes of interest. I mean, where we want things to be done, we want industry to expand. You know, mutually, we work together with the employers, and you must have seen me several times campaigning for the rival industries. We don't need to go on strike to do that, you know, because there are different methods of getting it done. I think what is good for the private sector is also good for the public sector. What we have seen in the public sector now is complete collapse of bargaining structures, and this is very sad because it was the public sector that set the tone for the private sector in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s. I mean, the public sector employer used to have the best of structures. You know, you could negotiate, joint negotiating council, people will respect them. But increasingly now, I think you have government officials, they are not on duty. I mean, take the ASU strike, for instance. I listened to ASU president. He said they wrote series of letters just to inform the Ministry of Education, you know, that, you know, let's have discussions over the agreement that has expired that you have not really implemented. No single reply. You know, no answer. I think it is time for us to make sure that our public officials pay price for their ineptitude, for their indifference to issues that affect working people. And here I'm saying so that we can put it point blank that any sector, any ministry where you have avoidable collapse, work stoppages on account of non-quick response or responses to communication from the union, the ministers shouldn't be on duty. I mean, the Ministry of Health, I'm surprised, 2 ministers. You know, everybody saw this thing coming. You know, the same thing with Ministry of Education. I mean, you can't do that in private sector where companies must make profit. No MD will be on seat when you have this series of avoidable work stoppages. I was just checking the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics on the issue of, you know, man-hour loss, human-hour loss due to avoidable stoppages, you know, running to 20 million man-hour loss. I mean, how can this economy recover with this kind of, you know, hemorrhage? So what I'm saying here is that I think we need public officers who have to be on duty and enforce agreements. And let me tell you, the crisis is not over. In fact, it's going to loom more. Take, for instance, the current minimum wage that is in place. We signed the agreement 2010. By law, Act of Parliament, signed up by the President of the Federal Republic. The agreement, I mean, the minimum wage is supposed to last for 5 years. And the whole idea of putting it for 5 years is that we should avoid this periodic, you know, I mean, over, you know, bloated demands by unions, you know, which nobody will be able to get those. So we said, let's short it into 5 years. Now, we're now 2017. The more you see, the less you, I mean, it's even supposed to be an impeachable offense. You sign a law, you know, you won't enforce it. You know, and today, the minimum wage is so miserable. The time we signed it was just about $110. With devaluation of Naira, it has come to less than $50, you know. And you can see workers have become, you know, working poor. You know, in fact, they become working beggars. You know, people can't live on their salaries. Now, we agree, let's set up tripartite committee. It has been set up. I mean, Comrade Dennis is there from the ILO. Brother Dennis, we know very well that when you set up a tripartite, it's to start negotiation. Now it has been constituted for the past 1 year. I mean, the names have been submitted. It's not been, you know, constituted, not to talk of being inaugurated. I mean, how can we run an economy this way? Now, the last quick point is that Nigeria is saying we are just trying to get out of recession now. Fine, but this economy could get better, quick recovery, when you pay every working man and woman as a when due. And what worker salary, what are they meant for? They are meant to buy locally good food, they pay their rent, they buy food, which is good for the Nigerian economy. No Nigerian worker takes the money to Dubai because that money is never even enough to survive at home. Now, why wouldn't you pick your workforce? So I think at the heart of this crisis is crisis of governance in public sector in particular. And I think it is time that we call our government officials, to order. There's a complete alienation between the government and the led. They think they are doing a favor. I mean, look at ASU strike. Everybody saw it coming. And it's periodically. Nobody pays any price. No minister is fired. No PAMSEC is forced to retire on account of lack of delivery, lack of keeping up to agreements. I'm telling you, no private sector manager will stay a day longer in office when you have this kind of stoppages, because no company will run. So what I'm saying is that I think, in summary, I strongly believe that we should apply the same mechanism that is happening in private sector to the public sector. It is time that we see government as business. It has to be run in a business manner, because everybody is a loser in this game. I mean, who pays the price now for the closure of universities? Of course, it's the poor parents, who have to endure more number of months or years in some instances, with money that is never available. You can do that, in other climate. Those who cause the crisis should pay the price. And that one we don't see for now. So I want to say in summary that we once had very vibrant collective bargaining structures in the public sector. It is time we return back to it. And public sector is even far more critical, because it should set the minimum standard for private sector to follow. Because if we do this, all these Asian employers who are just here to exploit our people, they won't pay salaries and when due, so it is government that will enforce minimum standard. And I think it's very well doable.
Sorry, there is one aspect of my question that you have not been able to address so far, but we've taken your submissions that are so interesting. Now, we are talking about labor leaders compromising their positions. There is this issue. There could be reasons why government is not respecting agreements with labor, because the labor leaders in some occasions may compromise their positions and take some, well, what Nigerians call bribe. Please, sir, could you address this aspect? Because this issue of, not honoring agreements, and the workers will return to work, and after a while we call the strike all over again, is becoming perennial.
I'm not sure, but it once again points to the point I'm raising. I mean, we're now in the era of fighting corruption. You know that both the bribe givers and the bribe takers are criminals, and they should be summarily dealt with. But I don't know, I'm from private sector, and I know that employers will not bribe union leaders, for them to enforce agreements that have been, put in place, or to deny the agreements. Because let me tell you, the word of work, in the private sector is for people to deliver profit to their shareholders, and at the same time pay their workforce, motivate them so that they can produce very well. Now, if this is happening, as you are saying, in the public sector, that does tell you the rottenness in that public sector. And I think I'm scandalized that government that is fighting corruption will find it easier to bribe labor leaders rather than pay the money to the workforce which they are supposed to be. But ASU that I know, NASU officials that I know, the NATS labor leaders that I know, I mean, those who are fighting can go on strike. You know very well that those are not people on the payroll of anybody. I think we should address the fundamental issues. The fundamental issue says that we have government officials who are unaccountable, who have even demonstrated, gross, I don't want to be a bit too hard. Maybe we should be more hard on the problem rather than ourselves. But who have really shown that they are completely alienated from the responsibility that they are put in place. And I think it's time for us to get them fired.
All right, thank you very much, Issa Arebu, for your submissions this morning. And blessing, Nigerians are beginning to react to this conversation. And we have some tweets here. Mike Ayako says, industry relations work where there is industrial relations, that's what it should have been, where there is unity of purpose. The recent strikes in the country has really exacerbated the issue.
Dele Jack Solomon has a tweet. The federal government and NLC must do all within their powers to regulate the industrial relations climate that would lead to a peaceful industrial environment.
Now, Mahmoud Haman, the incessant strikes in public institutions is the result of government failure in the application of rule of law and administration of justice.
Another tweet from Dele Jack Solomon. Government must endeavor to find ways to motivate workers to be productive, and such motivation can arise from enacting labor-friendly laws.
Festus Akimboyawa, working days lost in Nigeria every year due to large-scale strikes are huge. Government must be bold to enforce the no work, no pay policy.
For John Ifejika, he has this tweet, and he says, insistent strikes in Nigeria will stop the day our government stop being truce breakers.
Festus Akimboyawa, while Nigeria's workers can strike to fight injustices they face in the workplace now, truth in some of workers. Well, let me read meaning into this. While Nigeria's workers can strike to fight injustices they face in the workplace, truth is some of workers' disputes are personal and political. Well, he tried to say that the truth is that some of the workers' disputes are personal and political.
To address that question you were asking at the time. Well, Shineze Esang says the government never failed to remind institutions embarking on strike that until they down tools, they will never be called to negotiate. Why is this so? And from change to progress, strike is part of labor management relationship, but until strike doesn't pay, it will continue. Strike for 10 months and you are still paid.
Okay, now from Ostino, it is time for all civil servants not to turn up for work if they are not paid at the end of the month. Workers no go eat stone.
Workers no go eat stone. Change to progress again has a tweet. Can private sector go on strike for 2 months and still be paid? As a private sector worker, we went on strike for 7 days. We were not paid.
Now, Festus Akimboyawa, employers should build informal relationships with union representatives. Employers and unionists can work together if they have a good relationship.
All right, those are some of the tweets that have come in the meantime. Now, let's get back to our guest. Get back to Dr. Emmanuel Kaka in Benin. Mr. Isaremu talked about weakening collective bargaining. Now, as part of your closing thoughts, now, highly coordinated collective bargaining practices, as research have shown, tend to have less inequality in wages, lower and less persistent unemployment, and also fewer and shorter strikes. For some country, that is where, but for our countries, as if collective bargaining is less established, and what do we need to do differently?
I'm very happy Aremu mentioned about it. You see, when there's this system of collective bargaining, it helps a lot of issues. The issues will be handled before it gets to this stage we are now. But because there's no collective bargaining, we talked about cases of where individuals have mentioned that they are intending to go on strike. Nobody calls them to the table. There's supposed to be regular meetings between employers and employees to review the situation. That is not done on a regular basis. In fact, what we do in Nigeria is more of a reactive management of industrial relations. We wait. When there are problems, we rush with our core committees. We work with board of inquiries. We work with committees to handle that situation. And once that situation seems to have a little calm or relief, everybody burns down the shield and will return back to life and saying, hooray, it is normal as usual. But that has not solved the problem. And that issue of ASU keeps on coming up again. If the government as an employer of labor, and also an arbiter, because they are playing double role here now. They are employers of these people. They are also trying to resolve the issue at the same time. If they have continued to engage on a regular basis with this ASU, what will have happened? By now, these issues will have been resolved. So there is need to strengthen the collective bargaining process in this country. It needs to be strengthened. And the Ministry of Labor, I keep on referring to the Ministry of Labor, and I'm happy other discussants have mentioned that today, that the Ministry of Labor has a great role to play in these affairs. Now, once that procedure is strengthened, then we're going to have lesser industrial actions. When the employers and the employees meet on a regular basis, they have discussions, they look at problems ahead, they come to a compromise, they come to an agreement. And for crying out loud, agreements should be honored. Because it doesn't make any sense to spend so many number of hours sitting down behind the table negotiating. And at the end of the day, what happens? The agreements that are reached are never honored. I was happy Sele was talking about the government sending 1011, and that was what I mentioned at the beginning when I was talking, that how can now we are talking about negotiation? Who are representing the government is the question. Who are representing government in this particular negotiation? Now, at the end of the negotiation, who is supposed to have a follow-up to ensure that, yes, these agreements are actually implemented? So if these procedures are not followed, and then there's also need to look at our legislations. Legislations have to be looked. They have to be reviewed over the time. The last one was 2004, as mentioned by Zulu, up to 2018. That's about going about 14 years. The laws are becoming stale. There's need to review them. There's need to engage workers. And like one of the contributors who sent an email or a text message was saying that you cannot go on strike in the private sector for 2 months and get paid. So not until we start looking at it, everybody in the system must be involved. It's a tripartite system. Everybody must come in. We must put our hands on deck. We must look at where we are getting it wrong. We must involve all the stakeholders. And when this is done, we look at the entire industrial relations system, the entire laws, the legislations that have been put in place, and then try to follow up. Let's block the leakages. Let those who have their jobs do their jobs. If we do that, to a large extent, the number of strikes we have will reduce. Of course, we know that strike is not the only industrial action you have. There are a lot of them. But people go to strike because that seems to be the only one that the government hears. That seems to be the only language that governments can speak with you. When you're on strike, you are called upon. But when you're not strike, you're not called upon. So there is need for us to actually strengthen the collective bargaining method, the process, within the country. Starting from the Ministry of Labor, starting from the Ministry of Education, of whatever ministries you have workers. Strengthen these processes. Ensure that they are looked into. Ensure that when problems are trying to brew up, make sure they are nipped at the bud by discussing with the individuals involved. And when we do...
Dr. Okaka, thank you very much indeed. And let's return to Peter Esele for just very brief, as your closing thoughts. How do we move forward?
Clear. What I expect the government to do in strengthening Ministry of Labor, in as much as we complain about the Federal Ministry of Labor, one thing is also clear: the Federal Ministry of Labor is underfunded. There is no relationship between the Federal Ministry of Labor and the other ministries. What one will expect is that in each of these ministries, you should have a desk officer who the desk officer is in charge of labor issues. So there will be a flow of information from each of these ministries to the center, which is the Federal Ministry of Labor, and then you are able to collate and keep data. And if you are able to do that, it becomes easy for each time you have a problem in Ministry of Education, the labor attaché or the labor officer who is in charge, who is seconded from the Federal Ministry of Labor, report back to the minister. And once you have that, and the person is trained and is experienced, and he takes charge of that process. First, also make sure the Federal Ministry of Labor is properly funded and the capacity of the workers there who are negotiators are improved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter Selem. Yes, so Zulu, collective bargaining, briefly, we must go now. It is a strength which ILO recognizes, and how do we promote this?
Well, like you said, the ILO is made up of a tripartite, it's called a tripartite organization. Basically means it brings together governments, workers, and employers. And for collective bargaining to help, to happen, there have to be two parties, the employer and the worker. And in a situation where the discussions where the two parties don't reach an agreement, that's where the third party comes in to arbitrate or adjudicate. So really, in terms of collective bargaining is very important for any workplace because it provides or facilitates discussions between the employer and the worker on a number of issues, workers' rights, remuneration, and many other things. Because I think it's important that we note that collective bargaining is not just about pay alone. It's also about workers' rights. For instance, there's issues of maternity protection. There's issues of access to occupational health and safety in the workplace. There's issues of all these other attendant benefits that the worker gets. So it's important, therefore, that there's commitment and accountability and good faith from either parties to get involved in this discussion to ensure that ultimately it's a win-win situation.
Thank you, Dennis Zulu. Thank you very much indeed for your insight on this particular edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Dennis Zulu, the Director, International Labour Organization, Office for Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And Comrade Issa Aremu, NEC member, NLC, Secretary General, Textile Workers, former. Thank you very much indeed. We appreciate you this morning. Thank you very much. And also to our friend in Benin, Dr. Emmanuel Okaka, the Principal Consultant, Leadership Institute and Industrial Relations and Human Capital Development. Thank you for reaching us all the way from Benin. And
you didn't thank Peter Sele?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. You should do that. Peter Sele, we have enjoyed your wealth of knowledge in labor-related matters in this country. Thank you very much for your submissions this morning.
All right, to our companion segment, first of which is sports. Nigerian home-based Super Eagles set for the crucial clash against the Black Stars of Ghana in the WAFU Cup of Nations, just as Manchester United and Man City have an identical record at the top of the English Premier League. Table 5 after Game 5. Let's join our correspondent for more details.
Assistant coach of the Super Eagles, Salisu Yusuf, has opted to make